Askreddit. Cops of Reddit, what is the most suspicious thing you've ever caught somebody doing for a totally legitimate reason? Patrolling a military housing neighborhood, I had noticed a suspicious van parked around the area over the past few nights, always in a different spot, but I could never catch it coming or going. So around the 5th night of this, I hide my car and wait. Sure enough, the van rolls through. I waited a few minutes before following. Turn the corner and light up 3 guys rummaging through all the trash cans left on the street. Turns out, they were part of CID, Thinkness, the show, but army version. They suspected someone in the area was cooking meth, and were going through that garbage cans to find discarded ingredients. I only found this out after getting chewed out, after they called my supervisors. I still don't feel bad, no one told me. Found a guy parked behind a middle school around 5:30 am on a weekday morning during the school's winter break, so no one should be there. He didn't have much of an excuse as to why he was there, but nothing else was out of place and he wasn't wanted. It wasn't until he drove away and I looked around where his car was parked and I found out what he was doing. He had taken a massive dump that was just sitting on top of the snow still steaming. Made me laugh so hard all I could do was kick snow over it and go 10 to 8, available for calls. The first one that comes to mind for me, late at night, saw a dude hauling copper pipe out of a local grocery store after it closed down. Copper theft at the time was super common, so I thought I had a burglary in progress. I stop out, get ready for an easy arrest. Ask him what he's doing. He says he was hired to clean the place out. Ask why he's taking the copper. Owner told him that his payment was the copper piping. Since it wasn't going to be a grocery store after, they didn't need it. I didn't buy it for a minute. Bullshit detector was screaming at this point. So I find the owner in our records, call him, and sure as shit, dude was hired to clean the place out and was paid in copper pipe. That was their agreement. But then I asked him why he was out at 2 am, since it was super suspicious. Since the place closed down, there was no AC. As it was the middle of summer, 2 am was the best way to do it and keep cool. I was the only one on the block that didn't come out of the house after a neighbor was shot with an AK-47 at about 4:45 am. So my house was suspicious. The cops came over and banged on the door. They thought it was me. I slept through the whole thing. Took the cops quite a while to wake me up. I had no alibi. My roommate slept through it too. Kinda weird. I was just starting on the street around the time Pokemon Go was taking off. So many contacts in the middle of the night that were just people trying to catch Pokemon. Me, ma'am, I noticed you're driving in circles around this closed business at 3 am. Person, yeah, there's a herd of Charmanders here and it's too busy during the day. Me, oh thanks for letting me know. Pulls out phone and opens Go. Once in the early 2000s my wife and I were together in the corner of an empty hotel parking lot. Cops pulled up and said the hotel manager reported us as suspicious. We were like, we are just stealing the hotel's wireless internet. He looks in and sees us both with laptops on our laps and a miniature printer on the dashboard. The cop just laughed and said never mind. Hearsay story from a family friend who was a sergeant in a major West Coast city. One of his new officers was late for roll call one night. After about 45 minutes, sergeant gets a call from another station asking if he was the sergeant for the missing officer. Hilarity ensues. Apparently, the missing officer was getting ready to leave his apartment for roll call for the night shift. As he walked out to the stairs, he sees a guy in a ski mask hop through his neighbor's window. Cop radios the burglary in progress and runs back to his apartment to get his shotgun. When he gets back to neighbor's house, he heard a female screaming and the sounds of a struggle. Cop announces himself, kicks open the front door, runs to the kitchen, and sees what he thinks is ski mask guy sexually assaulting the neighbor. The neighbor sees cop with shotgun screaming at ski mask guy and she completely freaks out. Turns out ski mask guy was neighbor's boyfriend/husband doing some sort of roleplay fantasy at neighbor's request. At least nobody got shot and apparently the cop was known thereafter as Officer Cockblock. Son of a cop. My dad told me about a time, back in the 80s. My father was sitting in his cruiser, around the corner from a bar. A car drives by swerving a little with exhaust coming for the tailpipe, signifying a recently started vehicle, pulls the guy over, smells alcohol on the driver, while also noticing a large staff in the backseat. He has the driver step out, then inquires about the staff. The driver tells my dad I'm a black belt in Kung Fu, I use it in class. So my father, unconvinced, asked him to demonstrate his proficiency with the staff, whilst proving his sobriety in a sort of impromptu field sobriety test. The driver puts on a little show for dad on the side of the road. Dad's enjoying the show, but starts to hear sirens coming from all directions. A passerby had seen my dad on the side of the road in a face-off with a crazy man and a stick. Thinking my dad was in need of help, the passerby called the cops. Apparently, my dad had been so wrapped up in the show, he had not heard the radio calls for him. So dispatch sent all available units to his rescue. Passerby thought my dad was getting ass kicked by ninja. There's an old penitentiary in the middle of the city here. It was to be deactivated and it finally was shut down by the governor. People got used to that building being empty. But, for some bureaucratic reasons, they had to reopen it again, temporarily. That means holding bad people in again, and even though the neighbors weren't happy about it, they didn't think much of it, since it was temporary. Anyway, it is a building very close to the road, to residences and commercial buildings. It's not a huge place, but it has tall walls built somewhat like a fort, or a castle. Then one day, I wasn't even working, I'm driving by the street behind it, and I see 4 people rappelling down the fucking wall. They weren't doing it each on their own rope, they were doing it in the same rope, and it looked a whole lot like that Hollywood scene where the prisoners escape down the sheet's rope. This was in the middle of the day too, noon I think. I had to go around, find a place to park my car and observe. I called an HQ and asked if the old penitentiary was still open and just get its status. While I did this, I got to really see what they were doing, and it didn't look like escapees anymore. It turned out to be graffiti artists hired by the state to paint that big wall facing the houses. Only part of the building was reactivated, and this wall was on the deactivated wing. The graffiti artists were assessing something. This was 3 years ago. There's a cool painting on it now. I'm still glad I didn't have to chase 4 inmates that day. When I used to work at a grocery store I would get off sometime between 10 PM and 12 AM. And I also preferred to ride my bike most of the year to save on gas. Since work was close to my house and there were few cars out I never really bothered with lights. Already suspicious I know. Right around Thanksgiving we would get in these massive stalks of Brussels sprouts, which if you have never seen one they look like something you might find growing on an alien planet. A solid 3 feet of little bulbs at the end of spikes basically. They were super cheap, so I couldn't pass up such a deal. But of course the only way for me to transport it home at night was to ride with the stalk sticking a foot out of my backpack. I have no idea what the cops thought it was when they pulled me over. Marijuana? A weapon? They were doing their deal, where one talks to me and the other checks me out from behind when the one behind me busted out laughing. Are those Brussels sprouts? They let me go a minute later. 3 AM on a weeknight, and I pull up behind the car at a light. The light is green and the car is stopped but running. Foot was on the brake. Light turns red, so I wait behind him. Light turns green again, and this dude isn't moving. So my partner and I quietly exit our vehicle and approach his. He was completely passed out, asleep, with the car in drive. We woke him up and talked to him to make sure he wasn't drunk and he was just tired because his wife had a baby a few days ago and needed him to run to the store for something. That newborn sleep deprivation is real. I'm the suspect in this situation. I lived in a large town in the south of the UK in my own terraced house. Outside my house was a bus stop, so it had a few people who go by outside each day, but it wasn't in the heart of the high street. I had suffered from cluster flies for a few days and they came out of nowhere. We are talking maybe 50 or so, which is a little alarming, but there was nowhere I could see they were coming from. I got rid of them as quick as they came about and went about my day as normal. One day at the weekend I had a knock at the door with riot police who stated they believed that someone had died in the property and they were able to enter under an emergency act of law without a warrant. In their wisdom they spoke to the neighbors about who lived here after a report from an elderly lady visiting the bus stop. The neighbors mentioned my ex-girlfriend, who they didn't see for a few months. We broke up, and she moved out, but the police put the fly's report and this fact together as me being a killer. The police were sure I had something to hide as they instantly didn't believe I owned the house. I work in it, so make good money, and I'm thankful I saved hard to get on the housing ladder, but they weren't having any of it. I had to then wait under surveillance while my house was searched and riot police all in the street. I'm a keen gardener and upstairs in the airing cupboard I was attempting to grow some from seeds. The police were convinced that 23-year-old me was instead running a cannabis factory. In the end they found no dead body and they realized their mistake when I pointed out the 50 cacti around the house they conveniently didn't notice. I'm sure I'm on some kind of list now, but they left almost disappointed that their amazing detective work found an it nerd that likes spiniflora and not the next serial killer. One night I was coming home from a friend's house. It was late, like 1 or 2 AM, and their house is known for a bit of partying. And this was a relatively rural area, so cops don't have much to do. I hadn't been drinking or anything that night and there wasn't a party. So, as I'm driving home down the windy back roads, I hit a skunk. Well, I didn't hit it. It went basically right under my car, and I heard a bit of a noise. I keep driving, but after 5 or 6 minutes, my axe starts pumping out the worst smell you've ever smelled. I know it's the skunk. I'm only like 10 minutes from home. So I try to stick it out. I roll down the windows and kinda stick my head out, Ace Ventura style. It's not working. The smell is overwhelming. Now, I have to vomit. I pull over, put my hazards on, and start puking on the side of the road. After a minute or so, a cop pulls up and puts his lights on. I'm still vomiting. He gets out and sees this mid-20s dude with tattoos and a nose ring puking. As he's walking towards me, he starts saying well, looks like maybe someone had a bit too much to drink. Tony, oh Jesus Christ, what the f. As he's walking by my car he can smell the skunk. He starts dry heaving and pukes a little bit, while through my vomiting I'm saying I hit a skunk. I think it's stuck in the undercarriage. We both kinda just back off until we can talk again, and then he helped me poke the skunk off of the bottom of my car while we both dry heaved using his extendable baton nightstick? Do we still call it that? Then once it was off he just kinda nodded and was like, okay, good luck kid, and got in his car. We both seemed pretty embarrassed. Whoever you were, cop, sorry you didn't get the easy arrest you thought you had. But, thanks for helping me get that skunk off of my car. You have been visited by Danny Dorito. Subscribe to get danked. Thanks for watching.